Morning. Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Also, make sure that you subscribe to Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. That's one of our sponsors, our daily fantasy sponsor. Use the code 5 there. You get $50 to play right away. Get started. Even tonight, we got 30 NBA teams playing. You can play across the sports spectrum. We know there's no NFL, but there's still going to be NHL on there. I think they're putting the Four Nations on there too. Check out prizepicks.com. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down 5, you get $50 to play. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. Click on the link in the description. You'll bypass the $1 Apple upcharge. It'll get you into those 10 channels. Also, our stage shows. We go live on the stage shows after many games as well. This is content you can't get anywhere else. The most heat, the most information, and conversation on the team you care about. Check it out. It's Off the Floor. And now a song that's been slightly edited.
Down the Biscayne.
Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs.
Down the Biscayne.
Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. It's power have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. We got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. Took a night off last night. Feel like we deserve it after that trade deadline. So we took a night off, but we do have 2 games coming up. The Heat are in OKC, and then they go to Dallas. Then they get the All-Star break. Tyler Hero, of course, will be participating in the All-Star game, also in the 3-point shootout. Jaime Jaquez, provided he's well by then, should be participating in the Rising Stars game out there in San Francisco. So the Heat now 1 game under 500. They are now with a net rating of minus 0.9 on the season. And yet somehow they're still in the 7th spot and they're leading the Southeast Division, which just tells you the state of the Southeast Division and kind of the middle of the Eastern Conference. They're just ahead of Orlando, which has been spiraling since getting their 2 stars back. Since getting Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero back, they've been really struggling. The Hawks, of course, sold off a bit at the deadline. And so, it's very hard for the Heat to kind of just drop out. Like, I know that's what some fans want them to do, but even as they struggle, there are teams that are struggling more. The 4 seed is still there for them, but they show no signs of moving up to take it. But the biggest problem on the team right now, I think most people would agree, now that Jimmy Butler and that circus is over with, is that Terry Rozier is just not playing at a high level consistently. And, Alex, you and I have belabored this throughout the season. Of course, we were in favor of that trade. We have to acknowledge that. The majority of the front office, obviously, that's why they signed off of it. On it, we're in favor of that trade. The trade has not worked out. But this is not about recouping what you lost at this stage. They did get a first-round pick back in the Jimmy Butler trade, but, of course, they're going to lose a pick because of Rozier. It's simply about making the best of a bad situation, which is where I kind of felt we were with Jimmy, but this is a different circumstance. But again, has to be managed. Alex, before we get into, and I want to get your thoughts on what they do here. But the other night, they're up, what was it, 11 or something like that when he comes in the game. They're defending at a high level. It was early. Boston was probably going to figure it out anyway. And then they were down 10, in a flash. The energy changed. Davion Mitchell in his first ever start for the Miami Heat, again, did the things that we know he's capable of doing. He's going to struggle some offensively. We know that. He's not an elite offensive player, but he was defending. Wiggins actually looked pretty good in that first stint. And then, again, Rozier came in, and it's not just him. I want to make that clear, but there seems to be a correlation because, I looked at the stats today, and they're on-off numbers. It's just, it doesn't matter what lineup you put him in. He's been a starter. He's come off the bench. But this season, they're a minus 3.2 per 100 possessions when he plays. They're minus 5 per 100 possessions when he plays, minus 5.0, and they're a plus 3.2 when he doesn't. I mean, there's enough of a sample size at this stage. And also, I looked it up, and I know these stats are imperfect, but you got to find some kind of way to measure across, timelines and all the rest of this. Since Erik Spoelstra became the head coach of the Miami Heat in 2008, Terry Rozier has been having the sixth least productive season according to win shares. Now, again, I know that's a stat that has its flaws, but when you look at the players that are at the top of that stat,
Did you do it per
and you see
48?
that you can do it. Well, from 48, he's fourth worst.
I think that's a better way to measure it. So
Well,
it proves your point even more. You know what I mean? It's to your point.
He's fourth worst, and just to show that there is some validity to that stat, in terms of players that have had at least 1,000 minutes in a season, and Rozier has eclipsed that at this point. The guys who are on the top 20 of that list, LeBron has 4 of the top 5 seasons. Dwayne has 4 of the top 17 seasons. Bosh has 3 of the top 20 seasons. Jimmy Butler has 5 of the top 20 seasons. So, again, that stat does signify something, and he's producing a negative on a nightly basis. So, this is not personal. It's business. Like, what do they do at this stage?
Oh, man. The toughest of all tough questions, maybe. I mean, it's tough and not tough at the same time, because the easy answer, in my opinion, and I feel like for a lot of people, is just not playing anymore. Like, obviously, the trade deadline has passed. He's on the roster. You're likely going to have him until, at the very least, this summer, and honestly, maybe even likelier until next trade deadline at the very least, because I don't know that anybody's going to be rushing to trade for him unless the Heat are, ponying up other stuff alongside of him as a sweetener in a deal. So outside of, like, roster construction stuff, if you're just talking about rotation, the move is to not play him. Like, the team is, and I know nobody wants to hear this. I'm not trying to say this is like any way of like talking about the Heat's quality as a playoff team or anything like that. The Heat are a very deep team, right? Like, they have a lot of playable players. It's not a bunch of G leaguers behind Terry, whether you talk about his position or not position. Like, I don't think the position is the important part here, because the whole thing with Terry is he was supposed to give you this offense, right? He is an offense only player, basically. He doesn't play defense, gets killed on the screens. He's been bad on offense. And I was just looking at that on and off data yesterday. So it's funny that you mentioned it. I was literally looking at it yesterday, and the drop off when he comes in the game, and the one that you talk about, which is that's a huge swing. Going an 8-point swing is insane. But that drop off isn't just on the defensive end. It's almost as equally on the offensive end. He is a two-way liability. And I'm sorry, like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just saying how I feel about how he's playing on the court. Because, like you mentioned earlier, like, both of us were in on the idea of him being like the shot creator guy who can give you, just another guy who can do his own thing there. He just hasn't turned out to be that. I thought he was showing you that some last season. Has not turned out to be that at all this season. He messes up the flow of the offense. He doesn't take good shots. He just in general is sometimes hesitant, sometimes like overconfident. Like, he's just been this very up and down roller coaster all season long when you just watch him play. And when I say up and down, I don't mean ups. Like, there's been very many ups. Like, you could count probably the good games he's had like on your hand this season. And I'm really not trying to go over the top.
No, we're both not. It's like the Tower of Terror. It's been straight down. It's been straight down. And here's the other point about this. A couple
weeks ago, he had like 4 out of 5 game stretch where he had like 19 or more points on decent efficiency, and it kind of tricked me to be like, okay, maybe he could be like closer to that. But nope, just went right back down.
But here's the problem with it. Even when he has those games, it doesn't seem to help them. No, because in those moments, what happens is everybody else stands around, and it's just a point of diminishing returns. So we'll get into some of the solutions. Some of the solutions are G League guys, by the way, but there's other potential solutions on the roster. And like we said, the trade deadline has passed. His value seems to be in as an expiring contract after this season. So you almost have to just get to that. There's no way to validate the trade at this stage. Like that's just not going to happen. So, and they're not trying to, by the way. Like, I just want to be clear on this. I know some fans are trying to validate trade. They know collectively, okay, that this was a mistake to give up the first round pick, and then he hasn't fit the way that they hoped. And it's not a reflection on him as a human being. I just want to be clear on that. Like, I feel like we're piling on one guy, but they have other issues. Okay. The Bam Ware stuff offensively has not worked out to this point. They don't have a lot of shot
Jaquez.
creation. We've talked about that.
Jaquez is like the second biggest
he's
issue on the team.
he's fallen back considerably. And I do think he may, even now as we're speaking right now, there are 4 guys who have the stomach virus: Hero, Jaquez, Highsmith, and Rozier. Not Highsmith, excuse me, Robinson and Rozier. Well, Highsmith may not play anyway because Spo seems so up and down on him. But so we'll see how many of these guys actually play in OKC. And even if they do, even with Chet Holmgren out tonight, it's probably not going to matter. They're playing against Shea and that young team. Wiggins has been playing great. And additionally, you're dealing with Jalen with Jalen Williams. So I'm not having a lot of confidence about tonight's game anyway. But I think what we have to get to here with Rozier is this. All right, Spoelstra's playing him a lot. Like, this is not a case of he's still giving him a role. He's giving him a big role. He's been closing a lot of games. Now, maybe when Davion gets a little bit more comfortable and Spoelstra feels more comfortable with his offense. But and now, again, you're getting Hero back potentially tonight. So you may see him with Mitchell, and we'll see what that connection looks like. But Spo does, what's weird about this one to me is that Spo does have other options, because when you're looking at the other guards that he's played this year, they're all pluses. Their on-off numbers are all pluses. Now, some of it is weird lineup data, end of blowouts, one way or the other. But Alec Burks is a plus. Pelle Larsson is a plus. And significantly, Drew Smith was a plus before he got hurt. And I know both you and I believe that if Drew was healthy right now, he would be playing. And the reason that he stuck out so much was he just makes a simple play. He just makes the simple play. Like, it was just make a pass, spot up, and shoot. With Rozier, there's no simple plays. There's none of that. He's either going to have a stretch where he makes a bunch of shots on step backs, steps out of an easy, and Grady has talked about it. Like, when he's a catch and shoot player, he can be reasonably effective. But the things that they seem to bring him in to do were not to be a catch and shoot player. They were to create, and that has been a mess. So before we get to, well, you know what? Let's get to All Pro. And then on the other side, I want to ask you, because I polled this, and I want to get to what you think is the best idea here. Before we do, the best idea before hurricane season, don't wait until the last minute, okay? We know it's coming. We have avoided big storms for a long time. It's not going to happen forever, okay? We're literally right there.
Are you jinxing hurricanes?
Pretty much, I am. I mean, things can't get worse for me this week. I got a car stolen. I waited too long to get my driver's license renewed at the DMV. A whole bunch of things going on here right now. But the one thing that I would do if I still owned a house, I don't. I'm in a condo. But if I did, All Pro Construction Builders. They specialize in impact windows and doors installations for residential and commercial properties. All Pro Construction Builders, a state-certified, licensed, and insured general contractor. They service Miami-Dade, Monroe, and Broward County, and they use top-quality products that are locally made. Family-owned and operated. Reach out to our guy, Danny, 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. They'll not only give you a free estimate to protect your home in less than 8 weeks, but if you mention 5 reasons, you'll get a 5% discount off the entire order. So reach out to him. All Pro Construction Builders. Okay. Let me get to our poll here, because I want you to take a crack at this. All right. So I said, what should happen if Rozier's minutes are just taken away? So here are the options as I see it. Sean Rochester thinks they just give more of the current rotation more ball handling responsibilities. So the guys who are already playing, and that right now does include Jaquez, Jovic, obviously Hero, Bam, that you just give them more ball handling responsibilities, and you just forget the idea of having to add another guard to the mix. Another option was more Alec Burks, who has played a little bit more of late, has tended to play pretty well when he's played. We know he's not a great ball handler. You don't want the ball in his hands a lot, but he can make a shot. His defense, to me, has been adequate. I mean, he's not a great defender, but it's been adequate. Another option is more Pelle Larsson, who has had his moments defensively. Doesn't seem like Spoelstra trusts him to handle the ball a whole lot right now. Or the other option is you go to the G League options, which is either Isaiah Stevens or Josh Christopher. Christopher more of a kind of a combo guard athlete. Stevens is a pure point guard, but small, which means that you'd have 2 very small guards in your rotation, with both him and Davion Mitchell both being about 6 feet tall. Where is your lean?
So the easy one for me there was to narrow out Stevens and Christopher. No shots,
Okay.
towards those guys. I like what Stevens brings. He is the archetype of the pure point guard. But you mentioned the deficiencies are what they are as far as his size. Like I still want them to keep him around. He's really good at that. But I think with the team having a couple of guys there who are defensive liabilities as it is, and with them kind of wanting apparently to lean into the defense stuff with the guys they traded for and the lineup they went with, right? Last game, I don't think he really fits into that. So that was the easy one for me. And same thing with Josh Christopher. I don't think his role necessarily fits in very much with what they need right now. I don't think they want Josh Christopher to go up there and kind of be the shot creator. I don't think he's ready for that yet. And then after that, it gets interesting because I think they actually have, like a plethora of decent options. And again, they're a very deep team that doesn't really change my outlook on them, but they're deep. Like they have other NBA players, not like these G League guys who, you've never seen them play in the league. You have guys who are legit NBA vets, and then you've got Larson, who is, a second round pick who Spo already likes and who clearly has his own flaws. Like I expected him to be a better shooter than he is. And I think that's a real thing that he's got to put a lot of work in on, but he fits into the defense stuff. Like he's been consistently good on defense for a rookie. I think he's had his moments like the Dame stuff when he was just fouling. He has a kind of, I think, a rough foul. I mean, a rough whistle right now, but I think he's a good option in a vacuum. Now, I just think the fact that the shooting is, worse than questionable might keep him, out of being an every night type of guy. I think if the shot was just league average, he might be like an every night type of guy right now, even with the options that they have. And then you talk about Burks. He's like the offensive replacement for Rozier. Like you mentioned, you wouldn't have him dribbling and running a bunch of pick and roll, but I almost would trust Burks more as a handler because he knows what he can and can't do. He knows what his role is. And sometimes like he's had a couple of games where like he'll take a couple of weird shots, but for the most part, like you said, he's solid. Like he knows what he's there to do. He's not out there to dribble. That is not his role. And to be fair, that was literally the role that they gave Terry. He's just been very bad at it. So I don't expect, like, if they were to play Burks, I think that's a more than fine option. If you're like worried about the shooting on the team and the spacing on the floor with certain lineups, if you're going to play Anderson, if you're going to play like Ware and Bam, I think a guy like that who is just a solid shooter, an NBA vet, makes a lot of sense. And so I haven't really picked an answer here. I voted what Sean voted, but that was also because I was just like, if that includes the new guys, then yeah, I'm just kind of with that. Just lean into the defense, play the guys who are good, who are okay, and I think I'm there, but I'm okay with playing Burks. I'm okay with playing Larson. I'm okay with, giving Kyle Anderson a look just to see what he can give you. Obviously Mitchell and Wiggins, like I think they've got more than enough to look at. Terry is not giving you something that is like, oh, if we lose him, we're going to lose this. I can't point to a single positive thing that you would lose if you stop playing Terry. And I'm really just trying to be like, just trying to talk basketball about this, because you're right. Like there's been a lot of piling on, and I'm not trying to do that. Objectively, at least from what I think is objectively, like they've got other guys they can go to, different skill sets, like different things. I don't know what they would lose by playing another guy. He just has not only that, it's not just that he's playing, right? He's playing so much. That's what I think is a whole other thing. And then like Brady mentioned today on our Discord,
and with the ball in his hands too. That's the other problem. He's playing so much and with the ball in his hands, and it takes the air out. Like like he's taking the air out of the ball. It's taking the air out of the building. Like when he checked in, you knew. I mean, it was just kind of like, all right, this is not going to work. And it's like you're when you're sitting there, like hoping that a guy you just acquired, who has not been a full-time NBA starter. No, but I'm talking about like the guy you just acquired in Davion Mitchell, like who has not been. We're not talking about like get Dame back in the game. Like we're talking about a guy who's been a part-time NBA starter. You're like, you got to get him back in the game now because otherwise they got no chance to get this thing back. That's where this is. I'll go through what the poll is before we close here and then just give you my thoughts on it. And then we'll have more after the game tonight. So far on the votes on our Discord, subscribe to Off the Floor. Try with Stevens or Christopher is leading at 30%. Of course, everybody wants to see the new guys. More Burks is at 28%. More of Larson, 22%. More of the current rotation handling is at 20%. So as usual, the fans want to see something different. This is where I come down on this. I think for now, while you're trying to compete, you're trying to put a rotation together that fits, and you're trying to compete to get out of the play-in, which is where they're at. I would lean more into more of the current rotation handling. I'm with you guys on that. I think as we start to get deeper into the season, if they start to fall back and it's like guaranteed that they're going to be in the play-in, I kind of want to see the young guys. I want to see what, especially because there's a chemistry with the young guys with Ware already. Like Keyshawn Johnson is somebody I want to see later in the season as well. I think you want to see what you have with Isaiah Stevens only because of this. He makes the simple play. He's an elite passer, actually, but he makes the simple play. And to me, Drew would be playing 25 to 30 minutes a night right now with this team. Okay. And Stevens, I don't think can play that because he's smaller than Drew. That's the problem. Okay. Is that physically defensive and he's not the defender that Drew is. But I just want a guy who's just going to get you into offense. And I think that would help Tyler, Bam, and Ware in particular. And I don't want Wiggins doing a ton of handling either. So it's from what we saw the other night. So that's where I'm at with it right now. I would lean more into the current rotation and then go from there. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Last thing, I want to shout out Brady and what he said on the Discord, because I think this is probably the most, the most accurate take of it so far when he talks about how Terry could actually get pulled out of the rotation logistically. And he said it right. Like, I'm not reading what he said, but he basically said Spo is not going to pull guys' minutes just outright from one game to another. Now, a game like today where Terry is questionable, if he ends up missing the game and he likes what he sees, quote unquote, and just doesn't go back to Terry when he does come back, that is the Spo way. Like, we've seen that for years. It's kind of easy to tell, when there's a trend happening with Spo, because he tends to operate in certain, like the other night. Like the other night was a perfect example when we saw Mitchell and Burks as a starting backcourt. Like, we all knew, okay, so here
he wasn't going to start Duncan. He's trying to keep right because he's place holding for Tyler and didn't want to start Duncan in that scenario. No, I'm with you. I think that's a possibility. We'll see if he plays tonight. We'll have coverage on Playback. If you're listening to this before that, playback.tv/5RSN, and also a post-game show. Maybe we'll go live. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for joining. I'm not trying to pile on, trying to come up with solutions here. I'm not sure there's a great one.
By the way,
Jaime
is a part of this too. Jaime, if Jaime continues to go the other way, he might have to get pulled out too. It just depends. But he's also a young guy, so maybe you live with it.
There's more investment in the future in him. Although I'm with you on that. He's not been a whole lot better this season. All right, thanks to Alex. Thanks to our sponsors, All Pro Construction Builders. Prize Picks. Use the code 5.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.